Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a Q&A video. Oh my goodness, my kids are yelling outside. If you hear lots of kid noises, it's because they're all playing currently. Usually I film during rest time, but today I'm trying to get it done while they're all out and playing, and I don't know how good of an idea it was, but that's okay. I'm going to be filming a Q&A video. I asked you guys for questions like a month ago, maybe even long. No, it was more than a month ago. It was probably like 6 weeks ago. And I've saved them all up, and so I'm going to try and answer as many as I can. I got quite a few, so I'm going to have to ask my child to play with their bike. Maybe not quite outside my window. We'll see. But if you're new here, I'm a homeschooling mama of 3 kiddos, and I love homeschooling. I love sharing homeschool content. I share a video a week here on my channel, so please go ahead and subscribe, and let's get into it. Okay, so I've got stuff on my phone and I've got stuff on my computer, so it's like if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, and I'm just gonna start. So, first question, tips on using American curriculum in Australia/New Zealand. So if you are new, I live in New Zealand. Despite my accent, I have actually lived here basically my entire life. The last 25 years of my life, I have lived here. I'm 30, so I'm from South Africa, but yeah, I have a Mongolized accent, but I have lived here. New Zealand is home. I don't actually find it super difficult using American curriculum in New Zealand. I grew up doing that because I was homeschooled and we only had American curriculum. It's still predominantly American curriculum that is available to us. The things that you sometimes have to change are like currency and units of measurement. Definitely have to switch around the seasons. That can be a little bit challenging with calendar work and things like that. But just don't overthink it. It's not really that difficult. When it comes to units of measurement, I actually tend to teach that because I think it's helpful for kids to know inches and centimeters and feet and meters and, things like that. I just think it is actually helpful because people refer to it like miles and kilometers. It's great to know the conversions. And so I think that's actually a good thing to teach. But yeah, I don't think it's overly difficult. So it just can be hard sometimes with the seasons. Like when it comes to nature study, you do have to flip that around. So that can get a little bit confusing sometimes. Okay, next question. What is your most favorite part of homeschooling? Oh, that's hard. I love doing read alouds. That's probably one of my favorite things to do with my kids because I feel like we all get lost in the book. It's not just like them learning something, it's me too. So that's fun. In general, I would say just seeing my kids learn. I had a moment the other day where we were in our science. The kids had to do like a bit of a research paper on a bug. And so my kid had chosen praying mantis, but what made me really excited was not only did he like do a little bit of research, he actually read his paper, and he's 7, he's just turned 7, and to see him reading fluently a paper he had researched was just like, oh, I don't know, it was just like a really cool moment. And so those moments are very exciting for me. And then the second half of that question was, how do you explain to friends that don't get homeschooling, why do you homeschool? So I actually don't have a lot of friends who don't get homeschooling. Either they're homeschoolers themselves or homeschooling is very familiar to them. And so I have never really been in a position where I have to overly explain my decision to homeschool my kids. I'm also a second generation homeschooler, and so the vast majority of my family are very familiar with homeschooling. My parents kind of did the legwork in that aspect because they were the ones who were kind of the pioneers for homeschooling in my family. It was a very new concept back then. I haven't really had to explain myself a lot. And honestly, I don't think you need to. Like, unless someone point blank asks you, why are you homeschooling? Like, out of genuine interest, I really wouldn't take the time to explain an awful lot because a lot of time if people aren't asking with a genuine interest, then they're just trying to heckle you and they just want to get a rise out of you, and I just don't think it's worth your time. And also for me, I actually really struggle to answer the question, why do you homeschool? Because there are so many reasons that we homeschool that it's very difficult to like just settle on one. And it can also be difficult to explain that to people without coming across as offensive because you're often choosing a way of parenting that is opposite to what they're doing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I have an opinion on their style of parenting. It's just that this is what is right for my children, just like any other parenting decision, when it comes to health decisions and discipline decisions and all of that, we all have our different ways. And so sometimes it can be hard to explain it without coming across as offensive. You know what I mean? So I often respond with like a multitude of reasons, like, or sometimes I'll just say I really enjoy spending that time with my children. And so, yeah, I don't get met with that question very often, to be honest. What do you do on those days that your children really resist the sit-down work? My son is 6 and so active. He is really resisting all of a sudden. I've tried different time of day and getting outside first. Any tips? I don't want him to dislike school already. This is something I can definitely relate to. I have a very active son who's around about the same age. I think it's a balancing act of setting up expectations and also allowing some flexibility. So if my son's having a really difficult time with sitting still, it's not necessarily sitting still, but just doing the work. I need to know the why behind it. If it's just, I don't want to do it, then that's not a good enough reason for me, because we personally in our home have an expectation that our children obey. And sometimes you just have to do things that you don't want to do because it's just good for you. It's like, are you not going to let them brush their teeth? Are you not going to let them take a shower or wear clean clothes just because they don't want to? School kind of falls into the same category. But I do think that needs to be met with balance, because there are times where it's not appropriate for them to be made to sit still and work. Maybe they're not feeling well. Maybe they do need to get some extra energy out. And so oftentimes in between subjects, I have my son either run around the house a couple times outside, or I get him to do some push-ups or some star jumps or something like that. And I can tell when he's getting fatigued as far as his mind, like his brain, if he's getting tired from concentrating. So I try and read into that. But if it's just resisting for the sake of resisting, personally, I will discipline for that, because I need to know that when I ask my children to do something, that they're going to do it. That's just a general thing we have. And I do think we get a bit hung up on this whole concept of like, I don't want them to dislike school. The reality is they're going to dislike some part of school at some stage. I'm back. I got interrupted by my kids. Everyone wanted snacks. What I was saying was, I think we kind of go from like, I understand the generation where school is forced on children and to the point where it's just basically traumatic. And so we've kind of done this whole like 180 where we want to go the complete opposite way and not force anything. I think there needs to be a balance there. I understand not wanting to force children to do school too early, especially when you can see that they're not getting something where it's just not clicking. I think that there's definitely a time to pause and step back, but I also don't want to leave it to when it's just enjoyable for my children, because the reality is there's going to be some things that aren't enjoyable for them and they still need to do them anyway. I do think in the younger years, if they're really not enjoying learning how to read and it's just not something that's clicking for them, just like let it go and just read to them. And do something that they do enjoy. So if math is their thing, lean into that and do that with them. But I don't think like just being like, no, well, we're not going to do school because you don't want to do it is the way to go either. So I don't know. I might offend people with that. I don't really care, to be honest, because that's, if you're asking my opinion, that's just what it is. That's how we've done it in my home. And yeah, because there's always things my kids are not going to want to do. But it's just life. What's one thing you wish you focused on more in the early years? I don't know. I don't know that there's anything I can really think of off the top of my head. I feel like I've enjoyed our homeschool journey so far. Maybe reading more picture books than anything else. But like, I don't really have any regret about what we've done so far, because I think you just do the best with what you know at the time. And like, when we started homeschooling, Jack was like 4.5, and we kind of just dipped our toes in the water and slowly went into it. And I still had Annie was 3 and Charlotte would have been what, like 2, if that, 1. So I had babies still, and so we're kind of in survival mode still. So I don't really have anything specific that I can think of. How long a day do you spend homeschooling per child? How many days a week do you homeschool? How many different curriculums / subjects do you think is appropriate for your children's age? Oh, that's a lot of questions. Okay, so how long a day do you spend homeschooling? So our entire homeschool day usually spans from about 9:30 through to 12. But we're not homeschooling that whole time, and not all 3 kids are with me that whole time. So we do our group subjects in the morning. That takes up to an hour. Usually quite a bit less than that. And then they have a break, and then I school each child. Now, Jack's school probably takes about a solid hour now, and that's doing math and language arts and handwriting and spelling. And Annie's will take at most half an hour. So that's about for each child. And Jack's 7 now, and Annie's 5. And as far as we do 4 days a week of homeschool, we're kind of doing 3.5 now because we've got like a social day with the homeschool group in town. And then how many different curriculums or subjects do you think is appropriate for your children's age? Well, if we're going based off of curriculums, I don't have, I think it's just whatever you want to do. I don't think you could use a different curriculum for every single subject, and I think that would be perfectly fine as long as it's catered to your kid. As far as how many subjects do you think is appropriate? Again, I think that's up to parental discretion. We've added more and more as time has gone on, but that's not necessarily because of my kids. It's just you get more comfortable with homeschooling and you know what you can fit into your schedule. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. I think you can keep it very simple and just stick with the core subjects, or you can add a lot of enrichment subjects. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for that one personally. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video because it's gotten really long, and I think I'm going to do a part 2 because there's lots of questions to answer. So go ahead and check out both parts. I'll have them up at different times. But yeah. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no wars.